20 years ago, a Belgian circle known as Orange Juice created a first work, QP Shooting. The game had a simple story of a dog girl named QP trying to get her plane back from a gang of cat girls. Then after 11 games featuring 4 separate continuities, these stories became much more elaborate than a simple revenge quest. For example, the third game in the franchise, Suguri, has a story about an ageless, physically 14-year-old girl called Suguri who must stop an invasion of human-looking aliens. Before 100% Orange Juice was created, every story was self-contained. The only thing that indicated a sense of an overarching story was QP's appearance at the end of Acceleration Suguri's Playing Deity scenario, and even that can easily be brushed off as a joke since the ending revealed it was all just a dream. Come the next installment, 100% Orange Juice, and we have this magical girl who knows everything about the previous games create a board game where all the characters besides her are dolls. Despite that this game could also be its own story, the future installments of the franchise ended up adding plot points and characters to explain how this magical girl knew about all these different worlds, while building upon the stories that were already established. And that's what this video is here for. To understand how the plot of 100% Orange Juice came to be, I'll be going through every game in the Orange Juice franchise and give a linear timeline of what happened in each one. Starting chronologically with Flying Red Barrel, and ending at where I theorize is the latest point in the timeline right now, 100% Orange Juice Season 3. And yes, you heard that right, many parts of this video will be completely made out of theories, especially regarding what happened in between each era. Even the fact that I believe each game in the franchise is a part of the same world is a theory in and of itself. And to make sure this video doubles as a proper summary of each game's story, I'll note which parts are theories in the video to prevent confusion with what is canon and what isn't. With that said, let's get this timeline started with the origin of human flight. Our story begins in the world of Flying Red Barrel, a setting in the old times where the whole concept of humans flying was once considered to be unthinkable, but years later, aircrafts were invented and made capitalize on the phenomenon. Even Tequila, once a pirate of the seas, modified his ship to become airborne because it was more efficient. Soon, flying machines became commonplace to the point where an entire guild was created to defend the skies. Here's where the first protagonist of this timeline, Mark, comes in. At one point when she was a child, she snuck into the back of a plane. Once she reached the skies, she was inspired to become a pilot. With such ambition at an early age, Mark soon earned her aviation license and became the youngest member to join the guild at age 16, a title that was previously owned by Pete. With all the attention drifting from Pete to Mark, Pete started a rivalry with her with the intention of getting her to quit the guild. Mark's childhood friend, Burnett, also aimed to get her to stop being an aviator after the two got in an argument that caused a rift in their friendship. The stages of Flying Red Barrel center around 5 of Mark's missions. Stage 1 took place with Mark, known as Red Barrel, after a plane, shooting down sky pirates causing mischief. The sky pirates were commanded by their captain, Tequila, and his daughter, Mescal. Stage 2 had Red Barrel and Scholar investigate an unknown and potentially dangerous airship piloted by scientists that could cause problems for the guild, although Scholar was more interested in seeing cryptids than stopping scientists. Stage 3 focused on 2 missions at the same location. The first was stopping the speeding Lone Rider and his insistent followers from terrorizing the deserts, and the second was to stop Merchant who was illegally running his train throughout the desert. Assisting Mark this time was White Cross, piloted by Isla, who would shoot down the 2 bosses should Mark spare them. Mark's final mission before turning on the guild was to stop the resistance from entering town. The resistance was led by Grey Whale, aka Bourbon, and assisting him was Rose Windmill, also known as Sherry. Mark immediately recognized Bourbon as a former member of the guild and asked why he was launching an attack on an organization he was once part of, to which Bourbon himself explained how the guild itself was launching an all-out attack on everything in the sky. After Red Barrel defeated Grey Whale, she went back to see if what Bourbon said was true. Sure enough, once Mark reached the town's entrance, Green Frog, piloted by Grain, attacked Red Barrel. Depending on how well the player did, Grain either laments that such a great pilot turned on the guild, or being utter disgust at how such a bad pilot was able to beat him. After Green Frog's defeat, Mark entered a town where she was assisted by a pilot from a previous mission. Eventually, Mark approached the guild's ultimate weapon, Flying Castle. It was meant to be a symbol of fear to those who planned to terrorize the sky. This castle was piloted by the guildmaster himself, Malt. Like Mark, Malt had a love for flying around in the sky. In fact, it's his own idea of paradise, but due to the talk of the nation putting a restriction on flying, Malt started to fear that he would have his license to fly revoked. So he quietly started making plans to invent a flying machine so powerful that the nation wouldn't be able to stop it. And just to make sure there's no chance of his dream ending in failure, he made plans for the guild to completely take control of the sky. And yet, after Malt's clash with the former guild member, the flying castle was shot down. The guildmaster's reaction wasn't out of despair, but intrigue as to how a rookie pilot managed to shoot down 10 years of his hard work. Out of respect for Mark, Malt got his own plane, Golden Falcon, and began his dogfight with her. One that ended with his wings taken out, causing him to fall along with the flying castle, straight onto the headquarters of what was once the guild. Within a month, the guild completely dissolved. Since the organization that stopped them has fallen, every enemy Mark fought in her missions went back to their old ways, although smaller independent guilds have formed since then to stop them, one of them being Mark's. Despite their rivalry with her in the past, Pete and Miskal often come by Mark's guild to help her out. Additionally, Mark was still friends with former guild members Sherry, Isla, and Bourbon, with her offering to help them out whenever they needed it. Fournette ended up rekindling her friendship with Mark. She even started studying to get a pilot's license, much to her parents' disapproval. Grain was arrested and put on trial for treason. Despite his crimes, the public were fighting to get him a light sentence. As for the guildmaster who started all of this, he still aimed to take control of the skies again, even without his guild, and until the day he died, he kept following his dream of keeping the freedom of the sky safe away from the nation. And so ends the final entry of the Diary of a Little Aviator. While it was probably not the only book that covered the Blue Sky Union incident, it was written by the one who resolved it, Mark. Thus, the diary became an important part of history to where its contents were common knowledge in the following eras, most importantly being the next era. Even after the events of the Blue Sky Union incident, mankind focused on advancing their efforts on airborne travel to where both humans and animals were given the natural ability to fly on their own. Enter the era of QP and its world that spans 5 games with stories centered around 4 different factions. First, there are the students of Ebimanyo High School, which include Mei and her pets Red and Blue, Natsumi, QP, Sora, Hyosuke, and Cupita. Next is the Waruda gang, led by Yuki. Their members are originally recognized for having a silver rectangle on their right shoulder, but later installments removed this to where every member is wearing something cat-related. These characters include Yuki, Tomato, Mimyu, Krilla Laris, and Kiriko. The third faction are the Employees of Pures, a restaurant with no tables and no utensils. Customers are expected to eat in the sky. The staff of Pures make up of Chris, her boss store manager, and her assistant chef. The former two are references to Orange Juice's earlier works, Fruit Juice and Midnight Pleasure, with Chris being a reference to the main character of Fruit Juice, and store manager being the final boss of Midnight Pleasure. Lastly, there are the employees of the local shop, who include Arthur, his daughter Nico, and Aru. These 3 of which compromises the first story in this era, Xmas Shooting, both the original and its remake, Xmas Shooting Scramble. One night, Aru, who is secretly Santa Claus, had her bag of presents stolen, so she had to track down the person who stole them. Her first lead was someone who was up that night to host an Xmas party. Natsumi, with one of her partygoers, Mei, to attend. They met Aru and tried inviting her to the party. After her assistant, Rain, deduced that Natsumi and Mei weren't the ones who took the bag, Aru sneaked by the two, and she eventually found her next lead, Kiriko. She admitted to taking the presents, but was lying to get revenge on Aru for the Waruda gang not getting any gifts on Christmas due to their prankster nature. She was so desperate to beat Aru that she even ingested drugs just to get the upper hand on her. After Aru defeated Kiriko, she made her way to the one who really stole her bag of gifts, Arthur. He wanted to stop Christmas from happening because Aru gave out free gifts during Christmas, which caused its toy shop to go under. After he was defeated, Aru forced him to help deliver gifts to make up for the lost time Aru spent trying to track them down. But realizing the crisis Arthur was in, she decided to help him out in his shop as her Christmas gift to him. Once the incident was resolved, Natsume, Mei, and Kiriko told the public about the existence of Santa Claus and how the new clerk at Arthur's shop was her. This launched an entire public investigation about the truth of what happened that night, which led to discussion as to who in Arthur's family was responsible for the presents getting stolen. Since his wife had an alibi, that left him and his daughter, Nico, under suspicion. Not helping is that the two both accused themselves as the culprit behind the incident. Regardless of what truly happened that night, The buzz gave the toy store a giant surge in popularity, with Aro being Santa becoming common knowledge, much to her dismay. It got to the point where many believed that she loved announcing that she was Santa to everyone she met. Despite all of this, there's at least one regular from the shop that treated her like a normal person. One day, Kippy was on her way to purchase manga for the boss of the Waruda gang, Yuki. However, Kippy completely forgot about the manga when she walked by a convenience store and spotted a new type of pudding they made. But leaving the money in her pocket was her own personal spending money, Kippy bought the pudding and placed the dessert in the fridge for her to eat in the future. Later that day, Yuki found out about Kippy misusing her money and stole the dessert from the fridge, leaving a note informing her target that the Waruda gang stole her pudding. Kippy got upset after realizing that Yuki was the one behind the heist and set out to get her pudding back. After an encounter with Mei and the Waruda gang members Yuki, Mimyu, and Tomato, Kippy accidentally entered a Sky restaurant known as Pierre's, where she was greeted by the waitress, Chris. Kippy tried to excuse herself as she did not know that section of the Sky was reserved for Pierre's. Thinking that Kippy was trying to die and dash, Chris engaged in a fight with Kippy. Almost at the brink of losing, Chris called for support from both chef and store manager. But even with their help, she still lost to Kippy, who escaped and made her way to confront Yuki. Upon reaching Yuki, Kippy argued with her before they started a battle. As the fight went on, Yuki started to get angry, and once she completely snapped, she grabbed Kippy's arbits and threw them out of the fight, enraging Kippy. But even without her arbits, Kippy overcame Yuki's final attack and took the blame back from her. However, her victory was short-lived as she realized she was in the wrong the whole time after Yuki explained to her that the money that was used to buy the pudding was hers and that Kippy was supposed to buy manga for her with it. The story ends with the previous opponents that Kippy defeated in her journey to reach Yuki coming back and chasing Kippy. Sometime after the events of Kippy's shooting, an incident occurred where all the world's pudding was suddenly erased. Not just from reality, but from everyone's memories as well. All except for one person, Kippy, who went outside to investigate the incident. She first encountered one of her friends, Sora, and asked if she remembered anything about pudding, which confused her. Thinking that Sora wasn't being honest with her, Kippy fought Sora, only to find out that her friend really didn't remember anything about pudding. Still looking for clues, Kippy decided to go to the park to investigate, where she encountered Kyosuke, who mistook Kippy for the man he had a crush on, Kippita. Once defeated, Kyosuke told Kippy to go to the circus as he overheard someone going in that direction who was talking about pudding. At the circus, Kippy met a member of the Waruda gang, Krilla Laris, who told Kippy to meet her boss, Yuki. Going back to the street where she last fought the leader of the Waruda gang, Kippy confronted Yuki. While the leader was fully aware of the identity of the one who caused the disappearance of pudding, S-Breaker, she told Kippy that she was not strong enough to take them on. So, Yuki fought her, attempting to raise Kippy's spiritual level so that her desire to return pudding to the world would overwhelm S-Breaker. Upon her defeat, Yuki gave the last cup of pudding in existence to Kippy, who made her way to the heavens. Up at the highest point of the world, Kippy met the mastermind of the incident, Sweetbreaker, real name Amami. Sweetbreaker deemed pudding such an addictive sweet that it could potentially harm the future of humanity, so she sealed away all the pudding on Earth. And since Kippy still knew about the existence of pudding, she decided to also seal her away. However, Kippy's desire to return pudding back to Earth was so great, it transcended reality, causing the pudding Yuki gave her to talk. Just when Sweetbreaker was going to go all out on Kippy, who was a mere speck compared to her true power, Kippy became one of the 6 sweet gods, Sweet Guardian. The cries of everyone on Earth cheered Kippy on, making Kippy's power surpass Sweetbreaker. Sweetbreaker conceded defeat, as pudding returned back to Earth. Note, this section is based entirely on an April Fool's game that is questionably canon. Since its placement on the timeline doesn't really affect the future that much, I will give this game its own section. After a moment of intimacy between Kyosuke and Kippita, Kyosuke decided that the only way to ultimately prove his love to Kippita was to kill him. The two fought, with Cupito stunning Kyosuke once he tried taking off the upper half of his uniform, as one look from Kyosuke's half-naked body would instantly cause him to lose the fight. Eventually, Kyosuke was defeated, with Cupito as a winner. But it wasn't a complete victory, as Cupito learned the real reason why Kyosuke tried to attack him. He was dying of an illness and wanted Cupito to join him in death. Cupito got upset at Kyosuke for trying to murder him, and he told him that he wouldn't be joining him in the afterlife just yet. Kyosuke nodded towards Cupito, not blaming him for his choice. With one last request to Cupito before the two part ways forever, he asked Cupito to take off his dog ears. And before Cupito could react, Kyosuke went up to him and ripped them off. They never grew back again. Since QP Shooting and Xmas Shooting Scrambled were made after 100% Orange Juice, a lot of cameos were put into these games from other eras in the timeline. Both Flying Castle and Green Frog making an appearance in these games as mid-bosses. Green Frog was piloted by the Waruda gang, and the Flying Castle had an unknown pilot. Although, considering the boss that Aru fought after Flying Castle was Nico, it's reasonable to assume she had some kind of control over it. Since Mark's diary is a very important piece of literature for the rest of the timeline, the drawings she made were replicated by engineers like Tomato. Shifu Robot, despite Shifu not being born yet, wasn't Shifu's original idea. It was a mech created by someone else, mass-produced, and stored inside 100% Orange Juice cards. It's just that only a few managed to survive past a certain point in time. 100% Orange Juice wasn't originally a board game. It was the name of these cards that can store giant machines and then release them at will. It's just that a certain someone later down the line saw these cards and reasoned that could be the base for board game cards. Note: this section describes the origin of Sora's Great War, a narrative that's rarely mentioned outside of the fact that nobody in the universe knew how it started in the first place. As such, this is my own interpretation of what happened. Years, decades, maybe even centuries after the era of QP, the world was mostly at peace. While there were conflicts here and there, nothing could have prepared anyone on Earth for what was about to happen next. Before QP and Natsumi ascended to godhood, there was another god besides Sweetbreaker, Sweet Creator. This sweet god was responsible for inventing new sweets for humanity to enjoy. One day when coming up with a new idea for a sweet, QP suggested to her to stop focusing on making new sweets and enhance the flavor of her favorite snack, pudding. Since QP's idea was much easier to do than creating something new, Sweet Creator went along with it. So, Sweet Creator converted all the existing pudding in the world to her new flavor. The results were surprising. Everyone loved it. They loved it so much that nobody bothered to look into the ingredients that make up the pudding, because every time they tried to analyze it, someone would have already eaten it. And so the amount of pudding in the world started to diminish, with entire countries keeping any remaining traces of the snack under high security. For the countries that didn't have any pudding left, they would invade the ones that did and attempt to steal the dessert for themselves. And just like that, the entire world was at war. Horrified at the outcome of this new dessert, all four sweet gods agreed to have Sweetbreaker wipe the pudding from everyone's minds. The memory wipe was a success. Everyone forgot about the dessert, and the remaining pudding was sealed away for good. Peace was restored to the earth. But it didn't take long for everyone to realize that there were war machines from other countries causing destruction to their own. Even after they forgot about what they were fighting for, humanity quickly became motivated by fear as the war continued. One after the other, nations fell until only two armies remained. The sky had been polluted by smoke and ashes, causing the skies to be engulfed with gray clouds. Humans that possessed the gift of natural flight were once common, but at this point in the war, they were scarce since they were being used as living weapons under the name Altered Humans. And any that were born with that gift were fated to have their bodies modified to be used as weapons of mass destruction. Note, the two armies in Sora do not have names, so I will be calling the army that Sora was initially part of, Nation A, and the enemy army, Nation B. Ever since she was born, Sora was fated to join Nation A's army after she was discovered to be one of the rare few who possessed the power of natural flight. As Sora grew, she was constantly examined to make sure she would be compatible with Nation A's greatest weapon, a weapon that was so strong that it was capable of completely obliterating Nation B. Upon reaching the age of 16, Sora parted ways with her family to go out into the polluted world and fight any invaders from the other nation. While the weapon Sora was initially made to wield wasn't finished yet, she was assigned to gain combat experience out on the battlefield using gear that was much less powerful. Before going out on her first mission, Sora was given one final debriefing by a rookie operator named Sham. Going onto the battlefield, Sora was blasting machine after machine alongside Nation A's backup forces. After a while, Sora met the first altered human she's seen outdoors, Alte. Not willing to outright kill another human, Sora tried to reason with Alte so that they wouldn't have to fight. Denying Sora's request, Alte attacked her only to get incapacitated. Sora tried to talk with Alte one more time, but Alte summoned a plane and tried to get Sora killed along with her. However, Alte's sacrifice was in vain as Sora was the only one to survive the attack, albeit comatose. When Sora came to, she learned that she was rescued by Yukito, a deserter from Nation B who also shared the same dream of world peace as Sora. After Sora listened to Yukito talk about his ambitions, the two joined forces to stop the two nations from fighting. However, that was put on hold as the two altered humans from Nation B, C and Mira, were deployed to execute Yukito for treason. Sora went outside, and despite still pleading with the two to cease their mission, C and Mira attacked anyways, resulting in a battle that ended with their deaths. Sometime later, Yukito intercepted news that both Nation A and Nation B were going to be deploying their ultimate weapons against each other, and so, Sora made her move towards Nation A, where she would attempt to stop their ultimate weapon, and afterwards do the same for Nation B's ultimate weapon. While Sora was on her way, she was stopped by her former operator, Sham. While the two talked, Sham tried to convince Sora to come back to her army, but Sora refused since that would result in Nation B's destruction. Sham believed that was the only way the war should end. Afterwards, Sham tried to take Sora back by force, to no avail. Sham retreated to Nation A's headquarters, and Sora made her way to Nation A's ultimate weapon, Nas. Ever since Sora was declared missing in action, Nation A was in a rush to find another altered human to match the capabilities Sora had. However, no such match existed. The closest one they could find was another altered human called Nas. And to get her to fit the gear, they had to amputate her arms. Ironically, the first opponent Nat would fight using such gear was the one who was supposed to wear it in the first place, Sora. Despite being the ultimate weapon, Nat lost to Sora, who left her to convince Nation B's ultimate weapon to cease firing. However, said ultimate weapon unleashed a barrage of attacks on the city Nat and Sora was at. One of the attacks landed directly on Nas, killing her. Nation B's ultimate weapon was an altered human by the name of Starbreaker. The training she underwent to maintain control of her gear was through means that made Nat's amputation look tame. To provide enough energy to power her gear, Star Blasting Light, Starbreaker had to reach an extreme level of intensity, as in, she was put through so many near-death experiences that it irreversibly destroyed her mental state. After Starbreaker unleashed her attack on the city, Sora headed towards Starbreaker to destroy her gear. As Sora reached her, she already knew she couldn't just tell Starbreaker to stop destroying everything, so she defeated her. With no other options left, Starbreaker attached herself onto Star Blasting Light with the intention to annihilate Earth with it. After one last battle to end the war, Starbreaker stopped moving, either due to Sora severely damaging Star Blasting Light, or that Nation B forced the weapon to cease, but either way the Earth was safe. Starbreaker, who wanted the Earth to be destroyed so badly, started a self-destruct sequence on her gear to kill as many people as possible. Sora surrounded Starbreaker with her shield, completely contaminating the explosion once it went off and ending Nation B's ultimate weapon for good. While the explosion only claimed Starbreaker's life, the force knocked Sora unconscious, causing her to fall to the earth. Despite the uninterrupted descent from the sky, Sora survived hitting the ground, but ended up comatose for 10,000 years. Since both nations lost everything investing in two weapons that ended up being destroyed, not to mention how war-torn the Earth was, the two sides decided to stop fighting. With the war being an afterthought for those who saw it to the end, everyone was focused on their own survival. Earth was polluted with very few resources left to salvage, and almost everyone thought that humanity was about to see its last days. The two nations were still intact, with no desire to destroy the other anymore, and yet, they had no interest in helping each other out either. Since the war ended in a stalemate, Yukito commenced his operation to restore the Earth, with him asking both nations for their help in supporting him. This plan was known as Project 1. The goal of the project was to make his daughter, Suguri, become an immortal altered human capable of using her powers to restore and protect the Earth, just like it was before the war. Nation B rejected Yukito's offer, as while the war was over, he was still branded as a traitor and was forbidden from setting his foot in their territory again. Nation A, on the other hand, was more open towards Yukito's idea and dedicated some of their resources to making sure it would be a success. As for Nation B, they asked the head scientists who worked on transforming Starbreaker into their ultimate weapon for help. Reluctant at first after being forced to create a weapon that almost killed him, Shifu agreed, and unlike Yukito, his plan wasn't to get humanity to save the Earth, but leave it. And so, Nation B started constructing a giant spaceship to leave the Earth in search of a new planet that they could live on. At the same time, Shifu and the rest of the scientists would begin finding a way to extend Nation B's lifespan so that they could live to see the day that they'd arrive at the new planet. Once Nation B's spaceship was completed, he began altering the bodies of everyone on Nation B to have them capable of living for thousands of years. And with preparations complete, the entire nation left Earth. The spaceship itself was large and had two major areas of note. First was the head. It was a very small nub on the top of the ship with four propeller-like objects rotating around. Inside the nub is where Shifu piloted the ship and where he conducted most of his experiments. The bottom part of the ship contained pretty much everything else, but it was mostly known for a civilian block where hundreds of altered humans resided. While most of the altered humans were normal, there were 5 of them who possessed the natural power of flight. These were known as the Shifu Brands. However, there was one other altered human present that was around the same age as Suguri called Hime, the guardian of the ship. Back on Earth, Suguri celebrated her 14th birthday by being put under to be experimented on for the next 6 years. When Suguri woke up on her 20th birthday, she realized her body was in the same state as it was when she was 14. Suguri's dad, Yukito, congratulated everyone on the success of the experiment and celebrated Suguri's long-awaited birthday. And so, for the next 10,000 years, the now immortal Suguri was restoring Earth back to the way it was before the war. In the meantime, citizens from Nation A were living their lives like normal as the technical victors of the war. Within a human lifespan, those who survived the Great War like Yukito and Sham had passed away, leaving their descendants to collaborate with Suguri on restoring the planet. And after many generations had passed, the Earth was finally restored back to normal, with Suguri acting as its guardian. While that was going on with Earth, Shifu's ship had a very different series of events occur during the voyage. As said before, Hime was the guardian of the ship. She was the one maintaining order whenever conflicts occurred both outside and inside of the vessel. All the while, Shifu would occasionally call her to his lab to modify her body, slowly transforming her into his idea of the perfect altered human. As for the other residents of the ship, he would do occasional checkups on their bodies to make sure they were not aging. For the next couple of thousand years, the ship was at peace with nothing bothering them other than the fact that most of them had already accepted that they weren't going to find another planet like Earth. As for Shifu, his dream meant more than keeping peace on the ship. Their extended lives weren't going to last forever, and not even he was sure he was going to step foot on an habitual planet before he died. And the thought of the planet's natives overpowering him drove his anger even higher, so he took measures to make sure that didn't happen. The first thing that Shifu did was bring the 5 Shifu Brands to the head of the ship and altered them to possess powers that could kill any threats they would come across. While the experiment was a success, 2 of the Shifu Brands ended up scarred. The first altered human Shifu experimented on, Kyoko, couldn't use her ice powers without feeling pain, and later, performed this operation on Kei. Despite being the second oldest of the Shifu Brands, she had her mind regress to that of an infant. And just like his operation on freezing a human's age, Shifu could not redo his operation. Since there are now 5 people capable of destroying the ship, so much so that not even Hime could stop all 5 of them at once, Shifu had to make sure there was a failsafe. So, he installed a feature onto them that required them to obey any orders from anyone who had his face and voice. Shifu liked this feature so much that the next time he would call the altered humans back to the head of the ship to perform a checkup, he would install that feature onto them. While Shifu was more confident that he would be able to conquer his dream planet, he knew that there was a chance he would die before the ship reached its destination. Even though he was disgusted at the thought, he wanted to at least have some version of him step foot on the planet. So for centuries, he researched on creating a robotic clone of himself. At the same time, he was also worried about the guardian of the ship, Hime, dying too. Not really thrilled at the idea of creating a duplicate of himself just yet, he decided to start creating the AI for Hime's replacement first. Once finished, Shifu implemented the AI he named Sumika onto the network for the civilian block of the ship. Her objective was to monitor and report all suspicious activity within the area, but she was also meant to socialize and learn with all the other altered humans on the ship. With Hime also patrolling the ship to maintain order between the altered humans, she would be the one who would talk the most with her, with the two becoming close friends. Sumika's body was planned by Shifu and was at the prototyping phase, before Shifu decided that Sumika would be intelligent enough to finish her own body once he passed away. So, he focused on creating an AI and a body for his replacement. When the AI was finished and Shifu started developing his body double, something terrible happened on the ship. Kei snapped and caused a huge commotion on the ship due to her childlike mentality. Hime tried to stop her but failed as Kei managed to overpower her. Sumika reported the incident to Shifu, who headed to the civilian block. Upon reaching Kei, he ordered her to cease her actions. While Shifu was upset at Kei, he was even angrier at the fact that someone managed to defeat the guardian of the ship. So, as punishment, he told Kei to go to one of the ship's storage rooms and remain there unless he ordered her to leave. Making sure no one could talk to her, Shifu locked the room. As the onlookers who followed the two looked at what Shifu had done, he told them that they would share the same fate should they misbehave like Kei did. Shifu then walked up to Hime and ordered her to stay in her room as she needed to be upgraded. Horrified at the fact that the guardian of the ship, who was at the same strength as Starbreaker, lost to someone with the mentality of a child, his fears of finding a planet where life could easily overpower his forces were at an all-time high. No longer was Hime given the freedom to walk about the ship. Instead, she was sealed and experimented on until she would meet Shifu's satisfaction, an expectation that had no end. And to seal both Kei and Hime's punishments, Shifu would order the two to fight until the other was badly injured as part of Hime's training. As for the role of guardian of the ship, Shifu would take that role as Sumika would report any commotion on the ship to him, and he would give orders for them to stop. While his punishments weren't as bad as Kei's, it was bad enough to bring criminal activity at the ship to a minimum. While most of the altered humans didn't care, others like Yoko were angry at Shifu for taking such extreme measures to punish Kei, so they staged a rebellion to overthrow Shifu and free her. Their plan goes as follows. Kyoko would first hack into Shifu's robotic clone and find any loopholes in Shifu's orders that they could abuse. They would then go to Hime and free her, but not before removing the part of Hime's system that forces her to obey Shifu's orders. Hime would then go to Shifu and take him hostage. They couldn't afford to kill him because he was a navigator. And so, the plan went into motion. To even access any of the restricted areas on the ship, Sumika would have to be distracted. Not only that, but while the scientist that was with them inputted the password to get in, Kyoko needed to hack the terminal so that it doesn't inform Shifu that someone accessed one of these areas. Once they got in the room containing Shifu's robotic clone, Kyoko found out it was impossible to program the robotic clone to not give out orders. In anger, she rewrote the clone's personality to act nothing like Shifu. Instead, she opted to make him a creep whose only two desires were to replace Shifu and have his own harem. Anything else Kyoko could have done would only bring suspicion to Shifu. Before they concluded this phase of the operation, Kyoko noted how the clone didn't have a proper name in the code. Out of sheer disgust for looking like the man who scarred her, she just referred to the clone as No Name. The next phase of the plan, breaking into Hime's room, didn't take long since it had a similar hacking process to getting into No Name's room. Kyoko got into Hime's code and to their surprise, the operation went smoothly. Hime would no longer be able to take orders from Shifu anymore. The next day was the big one. They would wake up Hime and have her take Shifu hostage. However, their plan was ruined as the most unexpected thing happened. Shifu spotted a planet with habitual life. So, Shifu ordered the Shifu Brands apart from Kyoko and Kei to scout out the planet instead, while the others were ordered to stay inside their rooms. Shifu gazed at the planet as his ship was slowly approaching it. It was like the place of legends that Shifu saw in ancient textbooks of what planet Earth used to look like. But little to Shifu's awareness, the ship did not go in a linear path to this planet. It went in a complete circle. The planet Shifu arrived on was Earth. Upon reaching the Earth's stratosphere, Shifu opened the ship's hangar and launched every war machine he could to attack any intelligent life form they found on Earth. Along with their robots, Saki, Nanako, and Iru split up to make sure the planet they were on was ideal for human life to live at. Soon enough, Saki encountered the Guardian of Earth, Suguri. Due to Shifu's orders, Saki was forced to fight Suguri, resulting in Saki's non-lethal defeat. Suguri made her way to the ship and defeated Iru and Nanako in similar encounters. Upset at the fact that his worst fears were coming true, Shifu decided to take drastic measures. He released Kei and ordered her to fight Suguri. Excited to finally be free, Kei went all out against Suguri, only for her to get defeated. Knowing it was a matter of time before the person he feared the most reached him, Shifu sent out Kyoko to man the last line of defense while he got into the most powerful mech he could pilot. With Kyoko's defeat, Suguri made her way inside the head of the ship and encountered the one behind the Salvation. Shifu revealed to Suguri his plan on eradicating all life on the first habitable planet he could find, since it would be a nuisance to live in fear of other aliens. Disgusted at Shifu's motive, Suguri fought and defeated Shifu and his mech, Shifu Robot, to which he retreated to the civilian block to summon the guardian of the ship, Hime. Upon releasing her, Shifu ordered Hime to attack Suguri. Noticing how docile Suguri was, Hime refused to follow Shifu's orders, much to his surprise. Regardless, Hime attacked Suguri as a test of strength without the intent of killing her. Shifu's plan of killing all intelligent life on this new planet had ended in failure. The Shifu Brands were all incapacitated. The rest of the altered humans can fight. Shifu hated No Name so much he didn't even bother trying to retrieve him. Sumika's body wasn't created yet. And Hime, his own super weapon, was rogue. There's only one way Shifu could technically accomplish his dream of landing on a planet with no intelligent life forms on it, and that was to crash a ship on Earth and hope that he would survive the crash while everyone else wouldn't. After Hime and Suguri's fight ended in a stalemate, the two devised a plan to stop the ship from falling. Hime told Suguri about the layout of the ship and how Shifu was essentially holding hundreds of innocent lives hostage in the civilian block. However, there was one design flaw that Shifu overlooked in his impromptu plan, and that was that he was the only one in the head of the ship while everyone else was in the body of the ship. So, Hime separated the head of the ship from the rest and Suguri vaporized the head, killing Shifu along with it. The ship's speed was then slowed to a crawl as Sumika controlled the ship to make a safe landing. Once the ship had stopped, all the altered humans in the civilian block left the ship and successfully settled on Earth. The Shifu Brands themselves decided to form their own family, and Earth was once again at peace. With the journey finally over and the ship devoid of all human activity, all that was left for Sumika to do was finish her body and reunite with the altered humans. When Shifu sees his plans of making Sumika the new guardian of the ship, she realized that her body was left in a very unfinished state. Even using the blueprints that were used to create No Name as reference, the process would still take an absurd amount of time to complete. Not helping is that she had to rely on other machines as her only means of moving material around. She originally tried to get No Name to help her by activating him, but without so much as acknowledging she existed, No Name left to explore the world. Then one night during the Shifu Brands Christmas party, No Name crashed it by ordering the Shifu Brands to incapacitate Suguri and Hime so that he could force every person in the Christmas party to fall in love with him. However, Suguri and Hime defeated the Shifu Brands, which caused No Name to attack Suguri. Their fight ended with No Name's head completely severed from his body, incapacitating him. This incident ended with the Shifu Brands, Suguri, and Hime celebrating Christmas while they left at No Name's functional but captive head. A short while after the Christmas incident, Saki invented new desserts. However, she accidentally reinvented what was once forgotten to the world as pudding. But not just any pudding. It was the pudding that was the catalyst for the Great War. Once she made it, she started showing it off to all of her friends, to which they attacked her so they could eat the pudding for themselves. After Saki defeated them, she escaped to space where no one could find her. That is, except for one god sent from sweet heaven to battle Saki for the pudding, QP. She scolded Saki, saying that the dessert should not exist. Saki retaliated and became the fifth sweet god, Sweetmaker. The two clashed, and the result of the fight ended with Saki's victory. Reluctantly, Saki finished off QP with a Big Bang Bell, sending QP back to sweet heaven. Even though the events were revealed to be a dream, it turned out that both the dessert and the scuffle with QP were real, as Saki was still a sweet god, and that the recipe she used to make the pudding was real. Thankfully, Saki was able to recreate the dessert so that no conflict would come of it anymore. Sometime after the events of Acceleration of Suguri, Hime and Suguri came across a comatose Sora. After nursing Sora back to health like Suguri's father did 10,000 years ago, Sora went outside to find the world in worse shape than it was during the war. The skies were gray and filled with ash, except that's what it looked like to Sora since she hadn't seen snow before. Noticing Suguri and Hime, Sora attacked the two thinking they were the ones responsible for this. Not realizing how powerful her opponent was, Hime lost to Sora. Before Sora could land a killing blow, Suguri took her place. The two fought, with the battle ending when Suguri steered Sora beyond the clouds. Suguri revealed to Sora that the person who nursed her during the war was her father, and that Sora's efforts in the war led to the restoration of the entire planet. With the fight ending in a stalemate, Suguri welcomed Sora back to planet Earth. Ever since Shifu's ship landed, the other Shifu Brands and altered humans never returned. That left Sumika with her slow and tedious process of creating her new body with little assistance. At the same time, she made plans to remodel what remained of the ship to make it her own lab to pick up on her research that Shifu left behind. Knowing that she was on Earth, Shifu's dream was still unfulfilled, so Sumika decided to inherit his dream of getting the ship to another planet that could support human life. As months have passed with her body finally complete, Sumika accomplished a lot with her research. One of the strangest things she was capable of was deducing the entire history of the Earth just by reading archive books and logs. Two of her favorites were Mark's diary and Shifu's research logs from the Great War. This caused Sumika to hatch a plan with two different goals in mind. First, Sumika wanted revenge on the Shifu Brands and Suguri. The Shifu Brands for not coming back to the ship to retrieve her, and Suguri for killing Shifu instead of sparing him. Since they're all tough opponents, Sumika chose to resurrect the altered human Sora fought. Surprisingly, Shifu did not have a log on Sora herself, so she was skipped. And second, should Sumika's plan succeed, she hoped to get enough combat experience from both her targets and the altered humans from the Great War. So much that should Sumika find another planet that could rehabilitate human life, she did not have to worry about the natives of the planet overpowering her. While Sumika was creating the reproductions of the altered humans from the Great War, the unexpected happened. Her close friend, Hime, had come back to the ship. The two talked for a bit, and at one point in the conversation, Hime told Sumika about Sora's recovery. Later, Sumika asked Hime why nobody ever thought about revisiting the ship. Hime told her about how Shifu traumatized all of them during his experiments. Not understanding emotional trauma, Sumika came to the conclusion that the Shifu Brands didn't like her papa, so she got upset believing the reason why she was isolated for so long was for petty reasons. The conversation ended with Sumika mentioning that she brought the altered humans from the war back to life, and now that Sora's here, she can reintroduce her to Sham. Horrified at the thought of bringing soldiers from a time when the Earth was in ruin back to life, Hime scolded Sumika and told her to cease her research. As Hime left, their reproductions were completed. Ignoring Hime's warning, Sumika ordered all the reproductions to beat up the Shifu Brands and Suguri. Once that was done, they were to report back to Sumika for their next order. And so the little war between the Shifu Brands and the reproductions began. Note: since there are many endings to Acceleration Suguri 2, some of which directly contradict each other, the only endings that will be included in this timeline are Suguri and Sora's endings. This section is probably the one that's most up to interpretation, as the events for the future sections are the same regardless of whose endings played out. This is just my own interpretation. Once the reproductions reached the Shifu Brands' residence, they began attacking them. Soon, there was a series of battles between the two factions. While this was all happening, Hime, Suguri, and Sora were making their way to Shifu's former ship to investigate the cause. Eventually, everyone got into their final matchup before the three reached the ship. This culminated in all the reproductions except for Sham being destroyed in their last battle. While their fights were happening, Hime and Sora clashed since Hime knew exactly what was going on and knew what would happen to Sumika should Sora reach the ship. Sora was already enraged by the fact that everyone she encountered during the war was revived and suspected that the culprit was using them to destroy the world. Hime lost the duel, but told Sora to go easy on the culprit as her motivations were out of pettiness rather than malice. Sora obliged, but wanted to make sure that the culprit didn't go unpunished. She believed that for the safety of the Earth, the altered humans from the Great War should never be revived. Upon reaching the ship, Sumika appeared before Sora, to which Sumika noted that Sora was not supposed to be a part of this revenge scheme. Nonetheless, Sora was offended by Sumika's actions and the two fought, resulting in Sumika's defeat. Sumika swore never to do something like this again for Sora's sake, and as an apology, Sumika brought Sham back to the ship and had her play her farewell message to Sora. Sham then requested that Sumika destroy her body so that she can finally rest in peace. Once Sora left, Suguri went onto the ship to stop the incident. However, the incident was resolved the moment Suguri destroyed Starbreaker, the last of the reproductions joined the fight. Sumika's plan on getting revenge on the Shifu Brands was foiled. All she could do is clash with Suguri in a meaningless attempt to avenge her papa. The result was Suguri's victory. While Sumika's plan was a complete failure, she eventually befriended all the Shifu Brands, as well as Sora and Suguri. Despite Sumika's desire to achieve her papa's dream by finding a real planet to settle on, she couldn't just start the ship again and take off since she would be lonely traveling the universe by herself for more than 10,000 years. So, Sumika would spend the next 4 billion years preparing for the day both she and the rest of humanity would leave Earth. Meanwhile, after watching several generations of their descendants come and go, the altered humans' bodies started aging again, causing most of them to die of natural causes. While humanity managed to thrive for a very long time, they eventually faced extinction. And somewhere along the line, No Name ceased functionality too, leaving Sumika and Suguri as the only 2 humanoids left on Earth. With preparations complete, Sumika commanded the final model of the ship to leave the Earth forever before the supernova triggered by the death of the sun annihilated the Earth. Throughout Sumika's studies, she solved every mystery there was to know about the Earth, all but one little thing: the 6 weak gods. Sweetbreaker mentioned 6 of them, but all throughout history, she was only able to find 5 of them. These were Amami, QP, Saki, Natsumi, and Sweet Creator. There is no point in human history Sumika wasn't familiar with, so the only answer is that the Sweet God wasn't on Earth after all. They were another human, on a planet just like Earth, and that god would be Sumika's compass. As the ship trekked through the universe, Sumika kept the planet secret just to see how Suguri would react before she told her the big news. But what Sumika didn't expect was for Suguri to go inside of her room very early into the journey and sleep for most of it. While on Earth, Sumika researched ways to entertain herself during this journey, and eventually she came up with a device that would create simulations based on human history. While the simulations were originally designated to one room of the ship, Sumika would make the simulations portable to where they could be initiated anywhere at any time. Knowing Suguri will have difficulty conjuring up proper sentences as her lack of language comprehension regresses, Sumika decided to put a simulation in her room in case she wakes up. And much to Sumika's disappointment, Suguri was asleep throughout the entire journey, more than 40 billion years since it started. A few months before arriving at their destination, Sumika flew to the new planet and equipped a radar to detect where the 6th weak god was, as the god was more than likely at the safest part of the planet. Upon arrival, Sumika was nervous, very nervous. For the first time in her life, she was in a situation where she had little control over the outcome, and if she was destroyed here, both her papa's dream and the legacy of the Earth would come to an end. Sumika then rebelled herself to appear more friendly by turning into what she believed was the most likable thing on Earth, the mascot of Puyo Puyo. She then compressed her body to match the form of the mascot and tried blending in with everyone else. She listened to conversations from most of the residents on the planet to get a good understanding of their language before following her radar to meet the final sweet god herself, Yukie Tomomo. Tomomo herself was a middle-aged office worker who spent most of her life as a shut-in. Even though she had dreams of living the life of a magical girl, she was never born as one, thus never gaining special powers. That is until one day, a magical girl by the name of Mio granted Tomomo's wish at the price of Tomomo's life, as she would be only given this power for a month before she died. Despite getting what she wanted, Tomomo refused to use this power. Knowing that everything she did after that point was meaningless, she quit her job to wallow in pity. Sometime before the deadline arrived, Sumika in her Puyo form entered Tomomo's room, much to her surprise. Sumika begged Tomomo to help her and Suguri safely immigrate to the planet they were on. Tomomo agreed, but only if she removed the curse that Mio put on her. Since Sumika is from a planet where magic never existed, she couldn't help Tomomo remove her curse. At some point in their conversation, Tomomo told Sumika that her only real option of escaping death was to use her powers to move to an empty dimension. However, escaping to that realm is no different from dying, since the place was just a barren abyss. Not only that, but it only freezes her lifespan rather than removing the curse. Then, Sumika had an idea. She told Tomomo to teleport them to the abyss. Once the two got there, Sumika used her portable simulation to create a world based on Mark's, QP's, Sora's, and Suguri's eras from Earth. Since the simulation was customizable, Tomomo could make her own worlds as well. Tomomo's concerns were quickly erased. She didn't have to worry about dying anymore. She then used her magic to conjure up 2 dolls to add to the simulation. A teenage boy who looked just like her former boyfriend, Kai, and a hamster human minion for her to control, Marie Popo. Tomomo thanked Sumika and began explaining to her how the planet worked, as well as the ideal place the two could settle in. Since Suguri likes places with a lot of forests in it, Tomomo gave Sumika directions to another nation on the planet, one that Alicianrone resides in. Since they all speak the same language, Sumika will only have to teach Suguri the language they were speaking in. Sumika was a bit uneasy since she felt like she would need to make an offering to the natives of that nation. Tomomo jokingly told her that she should make a board game of the simulation if she's so worried about it. And after a bit, Sumika was able to do just that. The game was called 100% Orange Juice, named after the cards that were used to easily transport machines during QP's era. And so, Tomomo, Sumika, Kai, and Marie Popo played the first round of 100% Orange Juice together. Before Sumika left to go back to her ship, Tomomo told Sumika to keep in touch so that the two of them can help end Mio's curse. Sumika agreed and honored Tomomo as the 6th sweet god, Sweet Eater. When Sumika left, Tomomo erased Kai's memories to begin her own story, starting with Marie Popo stealing Kai's wallet and going through a chase throughout all the worlds the simulation had to offer, before reaching Tomomo and starting the process all over again once Kai defeated her. And so, Tomomo lived the rest of her time as a magical girl inside the abyss, and whenever she got bored, she would cause chaos to the worlds just to get a reaction from the dolls in the simulation. Although, she would create her own scenarios for the dolls to be in, like gathering pieces of No Name, and a competition between 4 of the sweet gods to gather as much chocolate as possible. All information she would share with Sumika. But there was one event that wasn't planned by Tomomo. It was caused by the one who was responsible for Tomomo's curse in the first place, Mio. Once Tomomo's supposed deadline in the real world passed, Mio did not hear any news of Tomomo's demise. So, she went to check on her, but all she found was a magical gate to this new dimension, completely unsealed. Mio went inside the gate, and what she saw next was something she could have not predicted. An alternate dimension consisting of various worlds? Even though Mio was disappointed that Tomomo had cheated this, she was more upset that Tomomo had never contacted her, and instead invited people from the outside world to keep her company. So, as revenge, she sought to destroy the place by creating several giants based on the creatures she found in the various worlds. Once Mio started her plan, the dolls would fight back against her minions, eventually defeating them. Although Mio always summoned more, the minions will always lose, failing to properly incapacitate any of the dolls. And so, this war between the dolls and Mio's minions went on for almost a year. When Sumika arrived at the ship, she updated the simulation to have its language converted to the one that was used on a new planet and included Tomomo, Kai, and Marie Popo as part of it. Sumika woke Suguri up, only to find that Suguri's case of social regression was worse than she thought. After sleeping for so long, Suguri ended up developing a case of amnesia and couldn't remember how to speak properly. To make it out of the simulation, Suguri had to form bonds with the characters within it and solve its overarching mystery. Sumika, now disguised in her Puyo mascot form, guided Suguri on a journey to regain their social skills. Their first scenario was at Ebimanyo High School, QP's world, where Suguri got to live out a day in the life of a schoolgirl. When they arrived at the school, they met QP, the first human Suguri met in forever. With no means of communication since QP was speaking a completely different language, Suguri made friends with QP by hugging her. Whether this was by her lack of options or by the fact that she missed being around normal humans remained unknown. From there, our protagonists traveled to various worlds based on the eras of QP, Mark, and Sora, making friends along the way, with each world unraveling the tale of the story's conflict. Reika Hoshino, and the concept known as mixed phenomenon. Reika herself was a character constructed by Sumika based on a what-if scenario where the Great War never happened, and Star Reika got to live the life of a normal high school girl. Once the group confronted Reika, she split into both the version of her what-if timeline self and a version of herself in the current timeline, Starbreaker. Once Starbreaker was defeated and the incident was resolved, Sumika wasn't satisfied with how little Suguri adapted to the new society, not even speaking once. Sumika took Suguri out of her room to give her lessons on how to socialize, while the dolls in her simulation grew more powerful in preparation to fight Suguri. Once the dolls were prepared, Suguri spoke to them for the first time. Even though they weren't real, she apologized for how disrespectful the game was, even with its good intentions. After defeating Suguri, Sumika then took the role as the final boss after the dolls realized she was the one behind the events of the story. Once Sumika was promptly knocked out, the simulation started to close. Hime appeared in front of Suguri, telling her to keep moving on. Even though she knew it was a copy created by Sumika, Suguri took Hime's words to heart, completely curing her amnesia. As the simulation completely shut off, Sumika got back up and told her that the simulation wasn't just for fun. She whispered to Suguri that they were a month away from reaching a planet like Earth. They were going to a nation full of forests and blue skies where the locals there were humanoids around their size. This revelation surprised Suguri so much that she almost fainted from shock. And so, the two charged their ship straight for the new planet, and the nation of Alicianrone resided in. Note, the game Alicianrone has not been released as of the time of this writing, and the status of development is unknown. So, I'll be writing my own interpretation of what the story of the game is going to be like, based on the information that was given through the 4 Alicianrone characters in 100% orange juice, as well as tidbits the staff have given us. Again, this section is just for fun, please don't take any of this seriously. Alicianrone, Rone for short, was a seamstress and clothing shop owner with a talent for making apparel. Alongside her was her sales clerk, Diru. Rone goes by the title of Barefoot Alicianrone due to her preference of not wearing shoes, even outside. One day, some of the items in the clothing shop went missing with several footmarks scattered throughout the floor. Her initial suspicion immediately went toward her rival, Teo Terada, and her gang of animals. So, Rone left Diru to clean the shop while she fought Teo Terada, Teo for short. Once she reached Teo, Teo told her that she didn't know what had happened to her clothes and said those markings were left last time Rone saw her. Teo then suggested checking Miyazaki's inn since she saw a bunch of different clothes from her shop there. Without hesitation, Rone went to the inn, but before she could get inside, she met her friend, Keo Repa. Keo Repa, also known as Repa, asked why Rone looked so upset, to which Rone told Repa about her suspicions with Miyazaki, wanting to stop Rone from reaching Miyazaki, and the fact that she wanted to try out her improved girl power abilities against Rone. The two clashed. Rone defeated Repa and told her to stop believing in that girl power superstition, as Diru was just as capable of fighting as she was. When Rone got inside the inn, she ran into Miyazaki. She told Rone that she didn't know where her clothes went. Rone didn't believe her and the two fought. Once Miyazaki was defeated, Rone scattered about the inn to find out that Teo had lied to her and that none of her clothes were there. Rone went outside and heard a loud noise from above. It turns out there was a giant spaceship slowly landing towards the forest. Rone was originally going to find Teo to confront her about her lies, but since there's an alien spaceship near her area, she decided to investigate that instead. Once Rone arrived at the side of the spaceship, two figures came out. One was a silver-haired girl wearing a hoodie, and the other was the mascot of Puyo Puyo. The moment Suguri saw Rone, she remembered her lessons from Sumika's simulation and began to hug her. Believing that hug was Suguri's way of killing her, Rone slashed at Suguri, to which she dodges. The two then clash, leading to Suguri's defeat. Suguri then smiled and told Rone that she enjoyed the fight, confusing Rone. The three headed to Rone's shop to sew Suguri's clothes as Sumika told Rone about their space travel. When the three of them arrived at the shop, Rone found Diru stealing clothes, making him the culprit behind the missing items. It turned out that Diru was taking the items and selling them to other people for a very cheap cost so that he can eventually open up his own shop. Angered by this, Rone fought and defeated Diru and ordered him to give all the money he stole back. Despite his treachery, Rone forgave Diru, mainly because she couldn't find anyone else to be the store's clerk, and told him to fix Suguri's clothes. To thank Diru and Rone for their kindness, Sumika introduced the game 100% Orange Juice to them, to which all four of them played it together. Amazed at how fun the game was, Deeru asked Sumika to replicate the game so that he could sell copies at Rone's shop. The game went viral as everyone on the planet wanted to play it, to the point where it sold over 1 million copies. Miyazaki and Reppa were interested in the game, hoping to raise their girl power by playing it. It also gave Rone's shop a lot of business, and the brand 100% Orange Juice became a household name. Once the dolls defeated the giants, their suspicions immediately went toward Tomomo, so they made their way to the abyss. Meanwhile, Tomomo was being confronted by Mio, who was ranting about how Tomomo never sheltered around the simulation. Once the dolls arrived at Tomomo's abyss, Tomomo explained to them that Mio was the one behind all the giants appearing. Mio then summoned one of every type of giant and combined them to form Roppochi to fight the dolls. After Roppochi was destroyed, Mio decided to take matters into her own hands and teleported them to her own world, her base of operations, Dark Citadel. That way, Mio would be able to play with Tomomo and her friends for as long as she wanted to. And since it was her world, she would always rig the game to her favor by giving herself almost 10,000 max HP. While the game was going on, Tomomo's first doll, Kai, reached out to Sumika. He asked her about buying a way to kick Mio out of their dimension. Sumika then told Kai about Tomomo and Mio's roles in the simulation. As the one who created the world, Mio had the role of God, and she was free to kick anyone from her world. Tomomo, on the other hand, had the role of simulation god, and not only could she kick anyone from any world, she could eject people out of the simulation itself. However, if Tomomo wanted to banish Mio from the dimension, she would have to knock Mio unconscious and force her to go through the portal leading to the outside world. Kai told Sumika that knocking Mio out was impossible due to her massive amount of HP that would reset each game. Sumika suggested to Kai that he should tell Tomomo that since the board game she helped create had over 1 million players in the outside world, she should imagine that 1 million people were rolling their die along with Tomomo. As Mio was about to start a new game of OJ, Kai came in and told Tomomo what he had heard from Sumika. Tomomo readied up her attack, and with a force that easily overpowered Mio 1,000 times over, Mio was knocked out, but only for a moment. Mio got up and surrendered to Tomomo, who lowered her guard. Taking advantage of the situation, Mio used her magic power to take Kai and Maripopo away from Tomomo and sent them to the empty void. Mio herself vanished into another newly created world in the simulation, one that was at a location where Tomomo would have a very hard time trying to access. Despite the setting for Mio's world being one of fantasy, the narrative her dolls were going to go through wasn't going to end in triumph, but tragedy. And the two dolls Tomomo cherished the most were going to go through complete humiliation before they would end up dying in the end. The session started with Mio aging up both Kai and Popo. Since Kai was based on Tomomo's former boyfriend, Mio would force him and Popo to fall in love with each other. She then created her own doll known as Ellie to act as the two's child, as well as one called Lulu, who would act as Ellie's overly attached best friend. Lulu was created to be so pathetic that her main use in the story was to lay eggs that would drive the narrative in the right direction. And so Mio's game began with her piece, Lulu, having been woken up by Ellie, who was on a journey to look for her mother. Lulu tagged along and the two ended up being a creature that's known to this world as a mouse. Ellie dropped all sense of self-control and started attacking the mouse, causing Ellie and Lulu to fall off a cliff, but were saved by Lulu's egg, giving Ellie wings. The two reached a town where Ellie realized they ran out of travel money. They then started earning money by defeating monsters and claiming their bounty. Eventually, their desire to get rich led them to raiding a cave where the legendary red and blue mushrooms were said to be at. However, a group of rival treasure seekers came to the same place with the same goal in mind. The rival group was led by Arnell, and alongside her was her assistant, Mei. Ellie challenged Arnell to see who can find both mushrooms first, and the competition ended with Ellie finding the red mushroom and Arnell finding the blue mushroom. The two fought over the other's mushroom, which led to the red mushroom being scratched, completely losing its value. Ellie ate the mushroom, much to the surprise of Arnell's group, not because it used to be valuable, but because she ate a mushroom that's known to cause hallucinations. This made Ellie go on a hallucinogenic rampage and forced Mei to eat the blue mushroom. The two then got into a fight, with the mission ending in failure for both groups. After recovering from the effects of the mushroom, Ellie and Lulu realized they don't have enough money for real food, which caused Lulu to produce an egg containing omu rice. While Lulu questions the moral ambiguity of eating something that came out of her body, a weathercock fairy named Cook appeared and ate the omi rice. Her friend Helena apologized to the two and promised to guide Ellie to her mother if she fed Cook more food. After Cook was fed, Helena guided them to a lakeside shrine where they reunited with Arnell and Mei Ni. But this time, Arnell brought more company with a dog named Pomeranius and a fish girl named Waddy. They were there to search for a legendary treasure within the shrine. Eventually, the 8 reached the treasure room and accidentally set off a trap while inside, causing the room to cave in. Lulu saved everyone with her lucky egg, which shielded them from the rubble. Once they got out of the shell, a bunch of mouses spawned, and before they could do anything, Arnell ordered White to use her torrent of magic to defeat them. In the aftermath of the attack, the shrine opened with Marie Popo, now called Mother Popo, stepping out of the shrine to greet everyone. At long last, Ellie found her mother and her journey was complete. But it was then that Mio stepped into the story and twisted it to the bad ending she had wanted from the beginning. Mio used her dark magic to influence Lulu and convinced her that since Ellie's journey was over, she wasn't needed anymore. The dark influence transformed Lulu into Dark Lulu, and Mio ordered her to destroy the world, starting with Ellie. Mio's plan almost came to fruition until Dark Lulu was convinced by Ellie to disobey Mio's orders. This shocked Mio, as her role of god should have forced Lulu to follow her command. It was then that Tomomo arrived and revoked Mio's role. She then told Mio that since Mother Popo stepped out of the shrine and into Mio's world, Tomomo could successfully track their whereabouts. Tomomo then declared herself to be the new god of Mio's world and ordered all the dolls to attack the former god. And so, everyone in the room started beating Mio up, knocking her completely unconscious. Tomomo kicked her out of the simulation and tossed her body back to the outside world. And to make sure Mio would never step foot in their dimension again, Tomomo used her magic to seal the portal. The story ended with Ellie and Lulu going out to travel the other worlds as Tomomo can finally live in peace without worrying about Mio ever coming back again. Back in the outside world, Tomomo and Sumika's board game, 100% Orange Juice, had become a worldwide phenomenon. Everything from both Earths and the simulation Tomomo was in had become common knowledge amongst board game enthusiasts. The game got so popular that set pieces like Pures were recreated, complete with maids that looked like Chris. Although, since flight wasn't common in their world, they made a 100% Orange Juice themed restaurant that was on the ground. The story begins at Family Restaurant Pures with 2 shiny sparkling academy students, Poyo Oyage and Chu, discussing about how they would make the most of their use. They were then interrupted by their friends, Haruka and Kanata. Haruka suggested that the 4 of them join a school club together, and after several failed ideas on what they should join, Haruka digressed by suggesting they should play a round of 100% Orange Juice. The last place player would buy the first place player one item from the menu. The match ended with Poyo in first and Haruka in last. With the 4 girls spending time with each other, they decided they wouldn't need to join a club to be happy, as they were already enjoying life playing their favorite board game together. It was then that Poyo thought up the idea of making a 100% Orange Juice club at the school, to which the other 3 agreed to sign up for. And so starts a tale of 4 Orange Juice fanatics who ended up becoming a part of the game they loved. All the while anticipating to make this video obsolete by proving all of my theories wrong. And that's it for the Orange Juice timeline. Again, the purpose of this was to keep you up to date on why everything is happening the way it is, and hopefully I helped you at least get a little more interested on what's going on in the franchise. I know a lot of the points I made are just theories as to why everything happened, because honestly, I doubt the creators had too much of the narrative in mind when creating shoot-'em-up games consecutively for 10 years. Despite the lack of new installments, 100% Orange Juice continues the story to this day, with the 3rd season having just started, with plenty of opportunities for character speculation and world building. And that's not to mention the very dedicated fanbase this franchise has. It's very, very rare for an indie multiplayer game to have continuous support for over a decade after its release. With that said, one must ask, when will Alicianrone be released? Will there be anything else besides 100% Orange Juice to continue this franchise? Well, I plan on making a video on those 2 questions in the future. As for now, I just want to wrap up what we currently know about the timeline. This is Silent Crane and I'll see you guys then. Take care.
友も幸せだった日々忘れ、友も悲しみを受け入れたい、友もいつだって私は一人なのよ。それが奇跡の魔法な